Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel, Becoming Bev. I have a treat for you today. I get to introduce you to my friend Diane.
Hello.
So Diane and I met a couple of years ago. In fact, almost exactly 2 years ago. We were both walking the Camino de Santiago. So we both started in southern France and walked all the way across northern Spain to Santiago. So Diane and I met at a coffee shop one afternoon and we just started chatting. And I just looked at her and I said, "You're my people." Like there was that instant bond and that instant connection. And so since then, Diane met me in New York. We did Mama Gina's little weekend workshop together.
Fun.
And we also did a retreat in Mexico together last year in January. And then Diane is who I was with when I got to stay at the Giraffe Manor Hotel and check off the number one thing from my bucket list in Nairobi, Africa.
What a treat that was.
Yeah. So she's someone very special to me. I'll throw up some pictures of us, with our adventures and doing things together. So today I'm just going to kind of ask Diane some questions and let you get to know her a little bit. So the first question I have for you is, so I know your story, but the Camino was basically your first trip on your journey. So explain to me how you got there, how you ended up, like where were you at in your life? And how did you let all of it go and make your way to the Camino?
Okay, that's a good question. That was definitely a turning point. So I'd been in a 20-year marriage and a job for 20 plus years and just needed to unpack all of the programming, all of what life had brought together. But
And what did you do for a living?
So I was a banker, or I did a small business loan program, which is guaranteed through the U.S. Small Business Administration. So it's very paper intense, very...
And how long did you have that job?
I think it was over 21 years.
So here's Diane with this corporate banking job, and suddenly she's out walking the Camino. So why did you quit your job? Explain that.
Yeah. So 2014 was a real tipping point for me. My mother had passed away, and I had heard about plant medicine in 2010, but in 2014, after my mom had died, I knew I needed something. And so I was able to go to Peru, and I did a ayahuasca adventure. And coming back, I just knew life is too short. You could see behind the curtains, and I needed to make a change. So I was married at the time, and had to go through we went through the process of a divorce, which took a year and a half. So I got divorced in 2016, but in 2014, I changed my password at work to Freedom 2018. So I knew in 2018 was the time that I actually could not finally be free, but would be at the point where I could do a big adventure. And the Camino was on my mind because of what it represents. My youngest graduated from high school, so I dropped him off at college on September 2nd, and I had a one-way ticket to Paris September 4th, and then started the Camino on the 6th or 7th or whatever day that was.
Yeah, it's interesting because I started the Camino on the 6th, but it was several weeks before you and I actually met. I would say we were at least halfway through that journey when we met. So I want to ask you a little bit. So the retreat that Diane and I did together in January was, okay, let me back up the story a little bit. So my daughter had also done an ayahuasca ceremony in Peru. So Diane and I, chatted it up and had that in common. And while I was walking the Camino, someone suggested that I read Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind. So having tons of walking time, I ended up downloading that book and listening to the audio version of it while I was walking the Camino. And what that book does is it unravels the history of psychedelics like LSD and mushrooms, and talks about how those got demonized basically in the 60s and 70s, and brings you up to modern day studies about psilocybin. And so Diane and I started talking about that. And Diane, can we talk about this?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm proud of it.
So, Diane had been I'm going to let you tell this because you'll have all the details correct. So tell me about the study that you participated in.
2015, I was in a study, one of 12, in a study at the University of Wisconsin it was a pharmacokinetic study testing synthetic psilocybin and how your body processed it. And the purpose of the study was to show higher doses were safe, because my understanding is that people in psilocybin studies that were trying to treat alcoholism, they weren't having the mystical effects because of the liver damage. So,
interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So we had 3 dosings a month apart, and the third dose was twice as high as the first dose, which was a pretty high dose. And again, it was pharmacokinetic, meaning so for 24 hours they took blood and urine samples and an EKG to have it. So it was a healthy adult study. And I was one of 12.
And how many people do you think applied to participate in that study?
Hundreds.
Hundreds.
I mean, They actually paid me to do this, right?
Fascinating.
Right? And what was nice is I was in the process of a divorce while I was going through this study, and I had these 2 guides that were just wonderful. And one of the things I took away is one of the questions was, well, how is this serving you? So not judging, maybe what you perceive as bad habits, is really look deeply at what is going on and how is it serving again? What are you stuffing down, or what are you hiding from? So that alone was transformative.
So you got a little therapy along with your journey.
Huge therapy. Yeah. And it's just, again, letting go of all the little things that we get tied up in.
Yeah. So, Diane, obviously it was amazing to me because I had never met anyone that had done a high dose psilocybin journey, and just to hear her experience about it and listening to Michael Pollan's book piqued my interest. I'm like, I want to try this. So I get online afterward and find this retreat in Mexico. And Diane's like, I'll go with you. So I'm like, yes. So she and I went down to Mexico together, and we did 3. We were a part of, I guess there were 16 people there through a group called Soul Medicine. And we did 3 high-dose psilocybin journeys, and in a very sacred context. And I think that that's important to know, that this wasn't like a woohoo, recreational thing. It was taken with a shaman present, and set and setting is very important.
That's key. Set and setting, mindset too, that you're going in the session with.
Yeah. So what I went into the session with, and I don't want to make this about me, but I'm going to for a second.
Please do.
The intention that I went into this with was to know love at a deeper level. And what I was shown during this journey was incredible and life-changing. So I saw energetically how we're connected, like even having this conversation, the energy that surrounds us and connects us. I saw how the trees are connected to each other like a sacred geometry, and how we're connected to the trees, or how we're connected to nature. And I felt love like a very clear heart opening. Like literally I could feel the vibration of love. Like I could feel it right now just talking about it. So I felt the vibration of love like a plate-sized opening in my chest, and really gave me a different definition for having an open heart. Like I understand that at a different level now. And I saw crystal droplets and white light. And I feel like because of that journey, I'm more connected and I know love at a deeper level.
And I gotta tell you, you emanate love and acceptance like nobody I've ever met. So,
Aw, thank you.
no, seriously, just the acceptance of.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, will you share a little bit about what you've gotten from your journey, from any of your journeys?
Yeah. Well, ayahuasca was totally different. I mean, it was so I was 50 and I hadn't really ever done psychedelics. So just so you know, it was kind of like the Michael Pollan story where I went to a conference in 2010 and heard about it. And it took me 5 years to be ready to actually have the experience, which is, I think, key is to be patient because don't force it, obviously, right? But so I had 3 ayahuasca sessions. The first was kind of just an introduction, like, hey, here we are, a little bit of sacred geometry, but nothing. I mean, it was, again, my first time, and I think it was a little introduction, which was neat. The second one was amazing, where I felt like I was playing a video game that started in this mucky, dark, cold spot, and I would hear noises or whatever, because it was a bigger group. And I would start attaching a story to it. And then when I'd tell myself, or they call ayahuasca the grandmother, as I got the download that that's just a story detached from it, I would go to a little lighter level, kind of. I mean, you really can't put this into words, but this is the best way I can describe it. And then it went on for a long time with these different lessons. And, finally saw a little piece of like, sun, and I wanted to like go to that light, and it's like I got pushed back down. I'm like, okay, I'll surrender, because it's like, the whole point was to surrender and to get the lesson. So then I actually could break through once I surrendered and gave away. So I think a lot of it was surrendering ego and stuff,
and kind of getting out of the muck in your life and going towards something lighter. So Diane is traveling right now, and she's at my campground in Missouri in an RV. Okay, so we were sitting at dinner last night, and Diane tells me that she was over at Lake Union in Seattle, and she kayaked over to her seaplane lesson. And I'm like, who gets to do things like that? Like, who gets to say that? So you have completely reinvented your life. Like, sold the house, like, and has just been traveling for the last couple of years. Now, okay, so again, Diane was with me at the Giraffe Manor in March when COVID hit. And I'm going to tell on you. So we're having this conversation, and like, she's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I'm basically homeless. And she's telling me about this friend of hers who has this condo on the lake, and, nobody's living there. It's up for sale, and it's really nice. And they, said she could, rent it basically for enough to cover the expenses. And Diane says, but I don't know. I think it's too nice for me. And I just looked at her and I'm like, girl, nothing is too nice for you.
You're like, the fact that you said that, you have to do it.
Right?
Thank you.
You're
for
welcome.
That.
So she ended up with this beautiful $1 million condo on the water, and this amazing place to kind of shelter in place getting through COVID.
And my youngest son stayed with me most of the time, and we had a lot of magic happen during that 5-month period. Yeah.
So, where else have you been the last couple of years, Diane?
So in August of 2018, I quit my job, and then in September, I had a month, and so September I took off for Paris, but I sold everything I owned pretty much in that time. So my car is my home.
The essence of simplifying your life.
Right. So I thought I'd do it for a year. It's something I had in my mind, starting with the Camino, just to start trekking. and I haven't really stopped. So
Right.
it feels like it's been a continuous trek.
So can you imagine going back to a 9 to 5 job again?
Never. Gosh, I hope I
Never.
never have to. Right?
Me neither.
Yeah. And I feel so fortunate because I am able to, I live pretty simply.
You do.
But
like pretty much she travels in one suitcase and that's everything she needs in that one suitcase.
yeah. Oh, and I've just the experience of not knowing where you're going to be, but the next day, it's a memory what yesterday was. That lesson has been so strong to just trust today and be here in today and not cling too much and not worry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
My next question is if anybody's out there watching this right now and just feeling a need to get out of the 9 to 5 or the rut or get off the treadmill or whatever's saying, whatever's saying
Gerbil
you
wheel.
want- there you go. What advice do you have for them?
I planned it kind of. I opened to the universe. I mean, I did have a transformative experience. And to see that, I mean, my saying is everybody's going to die. How many people truly live? And just trust, but don't jump too quickly. Because again, in 2014, I went to Peru. It took me 4 years to actually go through the process. I still had family commitments. I still had children in high school.
Yeah. So another thing that I want to say about you, because Diane is one of the most logical people I know. So she doesn't do things really like an emotional decision, like on a scale of emotional and logical, like 1 to 10, she's a 10.
Logic 0 with emotion.
Yeah. So this journey, obviously, logically, it made total sense to you.
It did.
On some level.
On a soul level, right?
On a soul level.
Because I figured I could always get another job. How many people are on their deathbeds with I wish I would have? That's something I just don't want to have.
Yeah.
Right?
How has COVID affected you? I mean, we already talked about you had your great place to stay, but I know that you meditate, and so how has it changed you, or what are your thoughts about COVID?
Yeah, I think initially when I started the journey, I was clearing and kind of running away and going to see all these cool places, where COVID has put a pause and just really doing some more inward journey. And like, I think the world has been reflected as a disconnected or out for myself type of mentality, where with the interconnectedness and going in and seeing what's reflected out there, how is that in me? What's being mirrored back to me individually? And I think if we can all pause and instead of blaming what's out there, saying, what's that trying to tell me? So it's really giving me more of a time to open spiritually, I think, versus...
I think a lot of us, Diane, I mean, I would have still been running all over the world.
Right.
So for me, it's given me this time to like be here at the campground, work on this amazing project with my daughter. I took Diane around and just showed her the area and the trails and the beautiful swimming pool, and so I feel very blessed, and I wouldn't have done that without COVID. So even with all the chaos, and as much as I'm over it, as much as I'm over the whole COVID thing, it's affected my life. You know, I do know people that have died with COVID. My sister was diagnosed with it, and she's totally well now. But there has also been some, like you said, there has been some blessings and some inner reflections also.
And I'm learning to cook healthy, fresh food, right?
Right? I think a lot of people have done a lot more cooking at home. All right, Diane.
Yep.
So I love that you stopped here on your way and your journey. I love you. I know that our adventuring together is not done. In fact, we were kind of like planning something earlier today. And I wish you so much love and so much beauty on your journey.
Yeah, thank you.
You're
You as well.
welcome.